Endurance Junkie Podcast, Episode 6. With degrees in exercise physiology and sports performance, Mat Steinmetz started working at Retül in Boulder, Colorado, where he began advising the likes of Greg Alexander and Mirinda Carfrae on bike fit. Over the last couple of years, he grew from the role as a technical advisor into that of a coach. And through his new company, 51 Speed Shop, Mat now offers his services as a consultant and coach to all ranks of athletes. Now, Matt, first of all, congratulations on the birth of your baby girl. How's fatherhood treating you?
It's good. I'm sitting down in my basement right now, and I can hear her upstairs making some noise right now. So, but it's been great. It's one of those experiences where people tell you about it, but you definitely have to experience it for yourself to really appreciate it.
How old is she now?
She is 9 weeks old. And her name is Eve.
When was she born?
June 17th.
Oh, June 17th, okay. Because I just had a second baby as well, a girl, and she was born on July 3rd, so yeah, it's only a couple of weeks difference then.
That might be 10 weeks. She's 9 or 10 weeks.
Anyway.
I lose track.
Now for those of us who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself and your sporting background and how you ended up in triathlon.
So when I was little, I was one of those kids that, I was outside playing sports all the time, and my dad was a runner, and so when at a young age, probably, I don't know, second, third, fourth grade, I was going to running events with him and doing the 1 mile fun run that they would have here in the States, and got into triathlon for a little bit, and then. I grew up in Indiana, which is a basketball haven, and it's just a town where running around in Lycra really isn't at the time wasn't really socially acceptable. So I played basketball all through high school, a little bit in college, and then I just played from a recreational standpoint through college, and I went to college in in Indiana at Ball State University, and I got my undergrad in exercise physiology, and then in grad school I got back into triathlon then. We were having to do some physiology testing and stuff in the lab, and I needed something to kind of establish my athletic identity that I had when, I was younger and growing up, and I just needed to get something back that I had a passion for. And so when I was in grad school, I started getting back into triathlon, and this was around 2005, and I did not really my first triathlon, but as an adult, I did my first triathlon in 2006, and I was hooked on the sport, and I was one of those people that were I soaked up everything I could. I used like the science background, but also real world experience from people that had a lot of experience in the sport. And then I moved to Boulder in 2007, and I was basically thinking that if I wanted to do something in the sport, I needed to go somewhere where the action was, just to, give myself a better chance to, make a career out of, the sport somehow. Whether, originally I thought I was going to be able to be a, race as a professional, but then, I soon discovered that I'm not that fast compared to the best in the world. So I turned my interest more to helping those, and I'm glad that I moved out to Boulder because it's paid off.
Yeah. What kind of distances were you racing then?
I was one of those guys that jumped straight into the Ironman because that was what I thought was the appropriate well, I didn't think it was the appropriate path, but that was it's like the person's never done a running race before and they want to jump straight into the marathon because that's what is supposedly epic and the most challenging, and that's what I did, and it wasn't a very smart decision.
Yeah, better take time and build some base over a couple of years before doing the real long stuff.
Exactly.
Now, before launching your current business, 51 Speed Shop, and we'll talk about what you do there in a bit, you work for Retül, the bike fitting company. Can you share a bit about what you did there and how you got into bike fitting in the first place?
Yeah, so I've always had a passion for like form and technique, and even growing up playing ball sports, it's like when I was playing basketball, it's like I wanted to have the best, most technically sound like jump shot that I could have. I wanted to do everything in a way that I thought was how it should be done, and I just think that I don't know if I was, you never know, like if it's just you have an interest in that and that's why you're good at it, or if you just it's like you pick up a paintbrush and you can either paint or you can't. So I felt, I've always been that way, and I never really had much interest in, we'd always talk about, I'd always look at bike positions and say what I think is good, what's not, but I never thought that I'd be a bike fitter. I had my first formal like bike fitting instruction in 2007, and Dan Emfield, who is kind of the pioneer and founder of TT positioning. He has a course that's called FIST, FIST, and he also is the creator of Slow Twitch.
Yeah.
Which is I think most people listening to this are going to know what that is.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So then, I was kind of doing a little bit of coaching, training, and I was approached by Retül in 2008, and that was they were just starting the company, and they had this position for a fitter, but it was down in Denver, and I live in Boulder, and Denver's 40K away, but the traffic and stuff you have to get into to get down there, so I really wasn't all that interested. And then back then, about a year later in 2009, they were opening and they were gonna base themselves out of Boulder, and so that's when I took the position to do that. And basically, what we did is, the company was small at the time. We had I ran a fit studio in Boulder, so we were doing commercial fittings for just the local community. We had pro triathletes in Boulder. Obviously, we were traveling to do fit camps with the pro tour teams, so I was going to do that. And then we also established what was called Retül University, so we were educating fitters on how to use the Retül technology. So I eventually, we were traveling all over the world throughout the year to train people who had bought the fit system.
Yeah, and so you were mainly doing bike fitting, but I think if I'm correct, you really started coaching or advising pro athletes at the time, right?
Yeah. So through that medium, I had known, I knew. Boulder's not that big, and I'd already kind of inserted myself within the triathlon community, and I knew a lot of these athletes, but as a bike fitter, I was getting kind of one-on-one time with them, and I guess my approach was when I'd have a pro athlete come in. For me, it wasn't like, oh, we'll just throw some dots on you and take a picture and make it look like we were doing a bike fit on you. Like, I wasn't scared to actually give them recommendations and change things and just give them advice on things. Mm-hmm. And over time, I'd kind of just give them a little bit more and a little bit more. And I'm kind of a well-researched person when it comes to the advice that I want to give. And I was careful to make sure that the advice I was giving, it was correct. And it wasn't just, I'm shooting from the hip just so it seems like I have an answer for everything. And I was very honest, with these athletes, and over time, looking at things from a different perspective and being honest with them and not being scared to, point out their blind spots or where I think they can make improvements. And, eventually it just turned into, a coaching and an advising role and relationship with these athletes.
Yeah. And I'm guessing you're spending more and more time doing that instead of just purely bike fitting. That's probably the reason why you left Retül and then started your own business.
Yeah. So as the travel with Retül ended up. We were traveling a lot, and most of that travel was international, overseas travel. And as the company started to grow, it started becoming a bit more corporate. And when that happens, you kind of just have to, batten down the hatches a little bit and become a little bit more efficient. And so we were moving into a new building, just kind of in the process of being acquired by a few different companies. So, it was just kind of the time where I needed to either make a commitment to reduce my responsibilities on the coaching and some of the wind tunnel trips and all that stuff, and really commit to working for Retül. And I just gotten to the point where it was just time for me to move on, because I liked doing all the other stuff, and I want to you want to be happy and you want to do what you love, and
yeah.
I just couldn't see myself only just being constrained to doing just kind of being a bike fitter. So I just decided to keep on doing what I was doing and just move on my own.
Yeah. Now, 51 Speed Shop, the name definitely means something. Can you explain that first quickly?
Yeah. So when I was trying to come up with, like, okay, what do I want to call this? What do I want to build? And I didn't want it to be Mat Steinmetz coaching, just because I've always basically the athletes tend to be the star, and I've always been in the background, and I wanted a business that I started not to really be I wanted it to be something that it was like more of a team environment, to where it's like it's not Mat Steinmetz endurance coaching. It's something where other people can the team that I have can kind of get behind it, and they don't feel like they're just working for me. It's like they're they can get behind the brand, they can get behind the idea of the business. And so 51 is, I got help from Tony DeBoom, who does the t-shirts with Endurance Conspiracy.
Yep.
And he was kind of brainstorming a little bit with me about, like, what can we call this business. He had several ideas, and he had one that was called 51. And so 51 is considered a lucky number in professional cycling.
Okay.
A lot of the guys won their. So if you got the number 51 in say the Tour de France, it would mean that your team finished 5th the year before in the team classification, and you're in the sub the 5, and then the 1 would be that you're the number 1
your
rider.
Team leader, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So 51, it's like Phil Liggett and Paul Sherman always comment, like, oh, he's wearing the number, so and so's wearing the lucky number 51. For during the Tour de France, because a lot of the Tour greats won wearing the number 51, and then I kind of threw the Speed Shop onto it because it's not a physical shop. It's more of a virtual it's a virtual place wherever business is kind of set up for the day. So it could be on the road, on the trails, in the fit studio. It's just kind of a virtual speed shop.
It's a pretty cool sounding name. So basically, you do there whatever you did back at Retül. You do some bike fitting, you do some coaching. Let's talk bike fitting first, because that's what you originally come from. And what interests me here now is that you recently posted a very interesting article on your blog, in which you describe how you got the former ITU world champion Peter Robertson from Australia back in a TT position after he left the sport for a couple of years. And you did it in a couple of steps. Can you tell us a bit about how that went down, and maybe what athletes at home can do already to improve their bike positioning before scheduling a proper fit?
Yeah, I think it's hard to give people like the TT position. It's tough because it's very dynamic as far as how low the bars are, where the saddle position is. So it's hard to give people advice on what to like physically do to their position at home. It's easier for me to give advice on what to expect. People at home, like some people are great at feeling things out. Some people don't have a clue, and you'll often even find that with bike fitters in general. It's like there's some good bike fitters, and there's bike fitters that aren't that good, and it's just like any other profession. But what I can do is kind of tell you things to expect on the TT position, because I think oftentimes people don't give it enough time. And I always say there's a difference between like pain and discomfort. And I don't care who you are, if you've not ridden a time trial positioning and you end up getting on the TT bike, you're going to have discomfort. And I think sometimes people don't give it enough time to actually adapt to the position. For instance, if I spend the whole winter and I don't get on my TT bike, I can hop on the same position that I rode the year before, and it was fine for me. I didn't have any pain, no discomfort. If I hop on it after taking the winter off without being on that, I'm going to be in a world of hurt. I'm going to have soft tissue discomfort and pressure on the saddle, my neck, my shoulders and arms, because it's not natural. So you have to spend some time to adapt to that position, and I think that's something that people don't often give enough time to be able to do that. And I mean, there's no replacing going and seeing a professional. I don't really even know where to start as far as sitting here telling you like where to position your saddle, fore aft, where to position your saddle. I mean, I can give general like position your saddle between 78 and 80 degrees, but then that doesn't really talk about how the athlete sits on that saddle. So you could have a saddle set up at 80 degrees, but you sit on the back of it, so you're not really riding all that forward. Or you can have a saddle set up at a more slack angle, but you sit on the nose, so then you are steep. So there really is no replacement for going and seeing a professional bike fitter. And then the other thing that I can tell people is just communicate with the fitter. Most fitters will sit there and they'll ask you, how's this feel? And a fitter should be open to your guidance. It's like going to the eye doctor. It's like you don't just sit there and the eye doctor says, do you like this one or that one better? And you don't sit there and say, well, I don't know, you're the eye doctor, you tell me. You have to be part of the process.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense, because I mean, I see a lot of people spending a lot of money on super light parts for their bike and buying $5,000 or $6,000 bikes, but they don't get the proper bike fit, and it's a waste of money.
Sometimes the bike fit's not a. Sorry to interrupt you, but sometimes it's not a one and done sort of thing with the bike fit. There's times where like with the blog I wrote, it took Peter Robertson 2 years to get to the position that he was at. So I think once you've been on the TT bike for a few years and you don't have any more weight to lose, and you're kind of at the end point, your position probably won't really change that much. But as you first get into the sport and say you need to lose some weight, and or your fitter, he knows, I've had this with many professional athletes where I know what I want their end position to look like, but I can't take them there right away. So it may be a 2 or 3 year process depending on how what the athlete's like. Some athletes you can just throw them into a position and off they go and they're fine, where other athletes it's like it takes time for them to adapt to the things that I just mentioned with the saddle pressure, the shoulders, the neck, even the ability to, I mean, we're turning circles on a bike, but sometimes it takes people a little bit of time to understand like the difference between the technique from their road bike to their TT bike. And it's not like there's a different technique per se, like I said, you're just, you're still turning in circles, but people sometimes try to correlate the two too closely rather than thinking to themselves, okay, this is my TT bike, this is how my TT bike feels. This is my road bike, this is how my road bike feels. Oftentimes people sit there and try to find a way to make them feel the same, and they're just not.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's move on to coaching now, because you started, coaching the pros like Craig Alexander and Mirinda Carfrae when you were still working at Retül. Now with 51 Speed Shop, I think you took your services also to the age groupers. Can you tell us a bit more about the services that you offer, and because I think it goes beyond providing just a training plan, it incorporates the bike fit as well, right?
Yes. So kind of, over the years, a lot, and there's a lot of coaches out there like this, but you start to kind of assemble a team of people that are around you. And like I said initially, I don't like to give answers to questions that I'm not confident that it's good advice. So what I kind of assembled around athletes like Craig Alexander would be a team of people that I could kind of turn for instead of being Mr. Know-It-All. I would have a doctor that is very into injury and signs of overtraining from a blood analysis standpoint. I have, and his name is Dr. Rock. And then I have guys like Dave Ripley and Ben Waite, who are really on the aerodynamic side of things. Like I've gone to the wind tunnel, and I know how to I've done a lot of work in the wind tunnel with athletes doing that, but they're like aerospace engineers, and they know a lot of the technical stuff from like equipment design, rather than like what I'm good at is saying, okay, I need a fast wheel, or I need this clothing to be faster, I need to know which helmet's the like I'm good at like taking what needs to be worked on and then finding people that are experts in those fields. And so now I still have that team with me, and as a coach I like to rely on all those people for their expertise. So we do blood analysis, so that helps us with are there certain vitamin deficiencies, or is this person is the training not going as expected because they're fatigued or they have low iron. So we're able to kind of go through and look at the health of an athlete. We're able to look at their equipment to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck. If I'm putting out 200 watts on the bike, I want to get the most bang for my buck as I can, for that. So we're big on equipment optimization, and then obviously we do bike fit, coaching, and just as an athlete you kind of get access to all that stuff.
How big is your team then? And is that like permanently the same amount of people, and that work for you full time?
Yeah, so most of these guys, they have other. So my aero guys like work for Zip, and my doctor is a doctor, and a few of the other coaches that I have, they have their own. Like one of the coaches is an athlete. The other coach works for a ski company. So they're not doing it full time. I do it full time, and but they're just there to basically to lean on when there's information that needs to be needed, or you need to consult with them.
Yeah, cool. Can you talk a bit about your coaching philosophy and how you go about creating a year plan for the athletes?
Yeah, so a lot of the coaching really depends on the athlete themselves. So what I might have set up for a pro is a little bit different than what I would do for an age grouper. And there's age groupers that have the time and the flexibility and the ability to train like a pro, and there's age groupers that are trying to maintain a stable job, they have a family. And so the first thing that I do is I look and see how much commitment can they make to triathlon. And I don't have I'm not one of these guys that's like, okay, if you can't train 25 hours a week, then I don't want to work with you. But I'm also very open and honest about, if you only have 10 hours a week to train, don't expect to be going under 10 hours for an Ironman. You're probably not going to go faster than, your average weekly volume that you can put down. And there's, you read about people that are able, that have done that or are able to, but those athletes are typically an anomaly, and I don't see that as a standard. So the first thing I do is I figure out, like, how can the sport fit within their life, and then I kind of model a program a little bit, based on where do you live. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, all right, I have one, you got to do base in the winter. Well, someone who's living in Indiana who, there's snow outside. Even in Boulder here, we have snow. We don't have an environment or a climate that is suitable to go out and log miles. So, I look at that, and, I have an approach where, I can't have an athlete stressing because they feel like they're supposed to be doing it a certain way, and it doesn't really fit within, their life or the environment that they live in. So I start there, and then as far as like how they train, I basically look at the body as a car. We have for long course triathlon, most of us, our biggest obstacle or limitation is strength and endurance, and so I really focus on that a lot. But when I'm saying I'm looking at the athlete as a car, I look at the chassis and at the engine. So at certain periods of time, I'm working on getting the athlete fit. So I'm working on the engine. And then in other periods of the season, we're working on, the chassis. And putting those together creates, the best athlete. How I do that, I use varying intensities. I don't really prescribe to I'm a high volume coach, or I'm a high intensity coach, or I'm a recovery coach, because basically, you use it all, and that's how, I'll train the athlete, and just getting them to understand, once we've kind of trained an athlete, I think, a lot of people show up to these races fit and they poorly execute. So one of the key things that my athletes learn from me is proper race execution. And I'm really into that because I was horrible at it when I first started the sport. And, you'd go, I could sit there and go do a ride with, a 5-hour ride with Craig Alexander, and then think to myself, well, yeah, this is how hard I can ride an Ironman. And, the reality is, you're often going to end up walking the marathon. So I teach a lot of my clients about how to execute the race, using, we use a lot of, power meter, pace, and really trying to hone that in on what they need to expect, for racing. And I think that'll, most people in long course racing defeat themselves. And I think if you can prepare an athlete, even though they feel like they might be, more fit than what how you tell them to race, it's, until they can prove that they can go faster, then they need to keep performing under their perceived limits. So that's the kind of there's a lifestyle, there's a training, and there's a race execution point of that. And I think bottom line, it just comes down, if you can kind of blend all those, it really gets an athlete to be consistent and gets them out the door. They have fun because they're racing well, and that's basically my philosophy.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, on race execution, because I think a lot of people underestimate that, because you probably, you're at the fittest you'll ever be on race day, and you come out of the water and you're feeling great, and you want to hammer the bike, and before you know it, you're just you're going out too hard, and you're having trouble during the marathon. So
something I always say, I say this quite a bit, but I always tell an athlete, when we talk about kind of the strength endurance, part of it, I always tell the athlete, I was like, if I were to pull you aside at mile 20 of the run, you're not going to tell me that you wish you had done more speed work.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, it's about almost Kona time now, just about 4 weeks out, I guess. And I'm guessing you have a couple of athletes racing on the Big Island this year. What do you typically have them do now in these last 4 weeks before the race?
So yeah, I have a couple age groupers, and I only have one pro racing this year, Liz Blatchford.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, right now, they're. I mean, actually, we're what are we? How we? We're 5 weeks out.
5 weeks out. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we're in week 6. So this weekend will be 5 weeks out from race, I believe. But right now they're kind of doing their last like 2 weeks of solid training for the race. So a lot of it now is we spent a lot of time getting fit, and now it's time to start doing some sessions that are a little bit more geared towards preparing you to race. So to go back to the race execution stuff we talked about.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of with the pro athletes, it's like you kind of know what is required. So you've been all year you've been working towards that requirement of, okay, what power do we need to put out on the bike, what pace do we need to run to be competitive competitive on the run. So you're kind of just you're planning to try to get an athlete ready to do that in the pro field. And then and that's the same for the elite age group field as well. I mean, they're essentially racing a similar kind of style of race. And then the other athletes that I would say for most athletes, it's really about, okay, if you've never, like, a successful race is kind of the blueprint to what your pacing power that you're shooting for. So if you the previous year, if you rode 220 watts on the bike and you ran a 3:15 marathon, we would say that's a very good race. So over the year, you've first of all, the goal is to get back to that kind of shape, and then if you're hoping to improve, and you want to try to average 230 watts and still run your 3:15 marathon, now's the time where I have athletes doing a few sessions to test that, to see if I think that see if that's a reality. And I always tell athletes, it's like, race day is not special. When people say that they had the race of their lives, it's not that they performed better than they ever have in training. It's they've performed and executed what they can do in training.
Yeah.
And, so take the run. A lot of us can run. A lot of us in training can run faster in training than we can for the marathon, and that's just that's how most people are. So you might be running 8-minute miles in training and think that feels easy, and if you can do that in a race, then you've had a great race. But typically people aren't going to be able to run as fast in the race as they can in training. But when you have those good days, that's what you can expect. So a lot of it is just getting athletes now, they're in shape, and now it's just kind of a few race prep sessions and still doing some endurance work, but it's more about practicing race execution.
And you use a 3-week taper? Is that it?
It's a little bit different depending on how much training the athlete's even able to do. Like for an age grouper that's only able to put in 12 hours a week, the taper is going to be a lot less than what it would be for an athlete that is able to put 30 hours a week in. So typically what I'll do is 3 weeks out, there'll be key sessions, but they'll be spaced out with more rest in between. And then 2 weeks out, kind of the same thing, but the volume's reduced. And then race week, again, it's just even further a reduction. I don't do a lot of intensity. I don't have athletes sit there and I don't have them ripping around. It's more like for an Ironman, it's typically pace or half Ironman pace. I don't need them doing really, really hard stuff.
Yeah. On a quick side note, I'm not going to ask you to pick a winner, but how do you see this year's race unfold?
To start with the women's race, I think last year was unique because I think it was the first time that we'd seen a pack of women, and I don't think they quite knew exactly how to play that. So this year I think you're going to have the same pack, but I think girls aren't going to just kind of sit there and be happy to ride in the group. I think they know that they can't just ride hard for a minute and expect, to drop the girls. Everyone's gonna, everyone wants to stay in that group. So I think you'll see a few more girls attacking the bike course a little bit, and they may not be overall contenders, but they may drag contenders with them. So I think that's how I think the girls' race will play out like that. It could, it can. I think the bike will break up a little bit, and it's just gonna depend on how hard people ride to see how well they run. So I still think that the winner's going to come from putting down a good marathon. I don't think that it's going to be a flyer off the front who doesn't run all that well that wins. For the men's race, it's hard. The men's race is it's strange every year because most of those guys will tell you that just being in that front group, you want to be there, but it sucks. It's people aren't. It's almost like everyone's had their brains removed and they're riding like their hair's on fire sort of thing.
Too much testosterone there.
I'm not. It's hard to say what it is, but everyone's just they're killing it, and it's strange because you have a group of 20 to 30 guys make it halfway up the climb to Hawaii, and then all of a sudden, on the way, on the rest of the half up, the rest of the way up, and on the way back, and along the Queen K, it's like all of a sudden guys that were there are getting off the bike, 15 minutes down on the front. So I think there it's almost like you need to let the group go before you're forced to let the group go. So it's the men's pro race is always really hard to predict because you want to be able to be in that front group, but you don't want to be in the front group to the point where it's like you get dropped. You want to almost choose to let it go and ride steady because guys, I mean, even the guys and the girls, they're all very similar, and obviously there's people that are much better cyclists than some of the other guys, but as a whole, they're all very, very similar. And I think if some of the guys would let the group go and then steady state time trial and be strong on the once you get to the Queen K on that last hour, that 15-minute deficit I think ends up being 5 to 8 minutes on some of the content, the guys that are going for the win.
Mm. All right, cool. Well, I'm hoping for the same layout as last year, and being from Belgium, we're all rooting for Frederick van Leerde here, and we had him on the first episode of this podcast. So,
and he did a steady race.
Yeah,
he let some of the front guys go, but he still just rode. He was strong at the end and just ran all. For the most part, running a consistent marathon is gonna. Because technically, like I said about the run pacing. The marathon times aren't that fast compared to what these guys are able to run, mm-hmm. but the bike it takes a lot out of them. So, just running an okay marathon off a strong bike ends up, putting these guys in positions to place very well.
Well, I saw him race a half Ironman here in Belgium 2 weeks ago, and his running is definitely up to shape. So it's looking good. All right. Well, that's about all the time we have here today, Matt. Just how about yourself? You've raced a couple of 70.3s this year. You got any more races coming up?
No, with the kid, I decided to back off. But I'm gonna race some races, 70.3 races next year, and then I'm gonna potentially do an Ironman towards the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to plug? You got any training camps coming up? Are you still taking athletes, by the way?
Yes, we are taking athletes, and if you wanna contact us, just use the contact page on www.51speedshop.com.
All right.
And definitely, we're always looking for for new relationships and really looking forward to helping athletes. We're not the best fit for everybody, but definitely always looking for athletes that we have a good relationship with and we can help.
Cool. Any other way people get in touch with you? Facebook, Twitter?
My Twitter is at Mat Steinmetz with Matt with one T. Facebook. I have an Instagram account. So all the typical. The best way is to go to the website and use the contact page. That email goes straight to me.
All right. I'll make sure to put the other links up in the show notes. Well, awesome. Thanks again for your time, Matt. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Well, Junkie, I hope you liked that interview with Mat Steinmetz today. And if you did, and if you like all the other episodes that we've launched so far, please go to iTunes and leave us a review and give us a rating. That will really help grow the show, and it will be much appreciated. Friday, we will be launching the next episode, and that will feature Greg Muller, who is the founder of Pure Athlete. And that's definitely an episode that you cannot miss. There's a lot of good stuff in there on how to optimize your performance and success in both sports and life in general. So I hope to see you then.